He is now the president and CEO of Alliance for Defending Freedom, and they're one of the foremost national organizations defending religious freedom in the U.S. They were formed in 1994, and it's to ensure religious freedom did not disappear in the U.S., and today it's needed more than ever. So I'm going to let him do the talking for himself, and without further ado, Michael Farris, Alliance for Defending Freedom.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be with you today. I don't know if any of you saw me in the lobby this morning. I have a daughter that lives in Knightdale, and I have 4 North Carolina grandchildren, so I had a good time here, and it worked out well that you invited me to come here on Father's Day weekend to be with my daughter and my 4 grandchildren. So, no, that's not all the grandchildren I have. We have 20 grandchildren altogether. I say to the liberals, you take over America your way, we'll take over America our way. So it's hard to do for a guy who won a college speech contest advocating zero population growth, really. Somebody changed along the way. I also would like to say hi to my friends here at the Convention of States booth, Mike Falkenberry and the rest of the team there. I helped start the Convention of States. Because of my work at ADF, I'm no longer directly involved, but I still strongly support it, and I encourage you to go over and visit their booth. There's a case that Alliance Defending Freedom is working on right now that is very close to home. You probably have heard about it. Baronelle Stutzman is the florist in Richland, Washington, who was told that she's going to lose her business as a result of her refusal to create flower arrangements for a same-sex wedding. Now, that case strikes very close to home. Her flower shop is in Richland, Washington. My sister and mother run a Christian bookstore in Richland, Washington. Her trial was in Kennewick, Washington. I graduated from Kennewick High School. So to say that I took this very seriously is the understatement of the century. That case is now, we're getting ready to file a petition for review by the Supreme Court of the United States in a few weeks. And that case is one of many that's coming along the pike that says we have this clash between an absolutist view of so-called fairness laws and an underappreciated view of religious freedom in this country. And the question is, which is going to prevail? And if you look at the mix of 2 things here, 2 things that are very important. One is, what's the relative harm to the people? To the 2 men who wanted to get married, their relative harm was to drive across town to get flowers at a different place that she recommended to them. They were glad to serve them. In fact, the case has been litigated over damages of $7 plus 6 figures in attorney's fees. And so their harm was $7. To Baronelle, the harm is get driven out of business in an effort to silence those who simply do not want to participate personally in same-sex weddings. We have a case pending before the Supreme Court right now, very similar for Jack Phillips, and he runs a bakery in Denver, Colorado. And there are many other cases like it. We also are defending students at Kellogg Community College in Michigan and in Bunker Hill College in Massachusetts, where students were outside the so-called free speech zone. By the way, if any of you here are university trustees or working at a university, there is a free speech zone that's appropriate in this country. It's called America. And so they were passing out documents outside the free speech zone, and in Michigan, they were arrested for it. In Bunker Hill, they were punished for it. The document was the Constitution of the United States. Yeah. And so we look at Berkeley, California. With violent threats, the home of free speech movement in the 1960s was, they drove Ann Coulter off the stage, something I thought would never happen. I know Ann a little bit, but the violence was just simply too much because of tactics that are utterly indistinguishable from the tactics of brown shirts and black shirts in Germany and Hitler, respectively. Violence to silence your opponents is unacceptable and un-American in the extreme. Another case that we're litigating in Georgia right now, where a student actually complied with this free speech zone policy and stood in the free speech zone and preached the gospel of Jesus Christ. And because someone was offended at that, I hate to tell them that, but that's essentially the point of the gospel, is the Bible calls it the offense of the gospel of Jesus Christ, is to say, you need a Savior, because all of us are sinners. And so young man preached the gospel and is being punished by his institution there in Georgia. We're defending his freedom to speak. In Michigan, owned by a Christian homeschool family, was inspected by the United States Department of Agriculture, and their inspectors took offense at a book they found in the employee break room where he went for lunch. It shared the Christian viewpoint on marriage, and there was a brief description about same-sex marriage and the Christian opposition to that. The United States Department of Agriculture has taken the position they will refuse to inspect this plant, which means that it will be shut down unless they remove the Christian material from this privately owned business owned by Christians in their own break room for their own employees. Of course, we have Bernie Sanders. Pretty much the same thing, sorry about that. Last week, saying that any person who believes traditional Christian views on the gospel is unqualified to serve in the United States government. Now, to tell the truth, anybody who takes the Muslim faith seriously believes exactly the same thing. Anybody who takes the Buddhist faith seriously believes exactly the same thing, because virtually all religions in the world, among the people who are serious adherents to that religion, take the position there is only one way to God. And yet, this applicant for deputy director of the OMB takes the position that everybody, regardless of their faith, should have equal rights in this country. That's the business of the government. If you have somebody who says there should be a religious test for serving the United States government, then that's alarming, and that should be grounds for disqualifying people. Therefore, Bernie Sanders is disqualified from serving in the United States Senate because he's the one that has imposed a religious test for public office. Then, of course, the effort to silence your political opponents because you disagree with them took a deadly, violent turn in Alexandria, Virginia this last week. But that's exactly, Tim Kaine, my U.S. Senator, said, we need to fight the forces of Trump in the street. Somebody took him up on it. They want to silence us. It's one thing to politically oppose your opponent. That's American. That's what we do. We stand up. Our weapons are reason, logic, argument, debate. We believe in the public square. We believe that truth will eventually win out. They actually don't really believe in truth when it boils right down to it, except their own truth, which they make up on their own terms. And they don't believe in freedom for other people. If you don't believe in freedom for other people, you don't believe in freedom. And the people that are identifying the fact that they want not to best their opponents in debate, that's okay. That's good. Bring it on. We'll take them on every time you can. Congressman Mehta's son was one of my national champion debaters in moot court at Patrick Henry College. Bring them on. Let them try to beat us in debate. But when they want to silence their opponents, that is utterly un-American and beyond what we should be permitting. And the history of that is very, very dangerous. One example of that for a group that is not probably all that popular in this room, but we would stand for the freedom of this group like we would stand for the freedom of anybody else, were the Jehovah's Witnesses. And the Jehovah's Witnesses took a position, still take a position, but this came to a head in the 1940s because they didn't want to salute the American flag. And government wanted to coerce the Jehovah's Witnesses to salute the American flag. Now that's a little bit ironic. Freedom and justice for all, and we're coercing people and punishing people who don't want to salute the flag of saying freedom and justice for all. Of course, I salute the flag. I'd encourage all my kids, I'd encourage all of you all to salute the flag. I'd encourage the Jehovah's Witnesses to change their view, but I'd never coerce them. But the United States, by an 8-1 vote in the Supreme Court, ruled in the early 1940s in a case called Civitas that the Jehovah's Witnesses were properly punished because a political democracy has the ability to punish you in contravention of your religious beliefs. 8-1 vote. As a result of that, the Kingdom Hall was burned to the ground in Kennebunkport, Maine. One man, Jehovah's Witness, was castrated by a mob. A sheriff in the South ran all the Jehovah's Witnesses out of town, saying they had been declared traitors by the Supreme Court of the United States. 60 in Illinois were jailed by the sheriff on the supposed grounds that it was for their own protection. The United States Supreme Court was so embarrassed by the violent effort to silence Jehovah's Witnesses that 2 years later, they took up the case of West Virginia versus Barnett and reversed themselves. 3 of the judges that voted against freedom the first time reversed themselves and voted for freedom in the next go-round, and made one of the most important declarations of freedom ever made by the Supreme Court. It said, this country knows no orthodoxy in matters of religion, politics, nationalism, or other matters of opinion. If there are exceptions to this, they do not now occur to us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving into an era of heresy trials by the left. And if you want to know the place that it's the worst of all, go to any major college campus in this country, and anybody that holds a conservative view of any kind. The president of Duke a few years ago, I really don't know if the same person is the president of Duke now or not, was asked, why are there no conservative professors to speak up at Duke University? The president of Duke said, because it's not intellectually respectable to be conservative. Everybody knows that. The president of George Washington University at commencement a few years ago said, move your tassels now at graduation from the right to the left, which is what I hope has happened to your political views while you've been here at George Washington University. We need to understand that people who want to silence their opponents and use the power of government through college institutions and otherwise to silence conservative voices because they don't agree with us, they are pursuing the path that inevitably leads to totalitarian government. We will not have a free country on a sustained basis if we don't raise young people in the principles of freedom. If they don't believe in free speech in college campuses now, we will not remain a free country. That's just plain fact. Alliance Defending Freedom is committed to the defense of the First Amendment in every possible venue. Whether it's Barronelle Stutzman, whether it's on a college campus, we're getting ready to defend students who want to organize Second Amendment groups on college campuses, and they're being told they can't do so because they can't get anybody to be a faculty advisor for the group. The reason is the faculty is afraid to do it because they know they'll lose their job if they stand up for the Second Amendment. We're here to defend the First Amendment so that the Second Amendment can also defend us back. It is a symbiotic relationship. They go together. I would encourage you, I just thought of this as I was preparing for today. If you're giving to your alma mater, I would suggest check out their speech policy. And if they're not defending free speech, write them a note instead of a check and say, I'm going to give my money this year to groups that are defending the freedom of speech on college campuses. And until you get it right, I'm not giving to you anymore. A few notes like that, colleges will turn around in a minute. I have been defending homeschoolers for 33 years. I changed to come to Alliance Defending Freedom in January of this year, and it's a bit of a change for me. I was also at Patrick Henry College for a long time. And I'm homeschooling and Patrick Henry and the Blackstone program at Alliance Defending Freedom are all about long-term future plans. And I believe in those things. I've invested a lot of years in long-term future plans because I believed for a long time that the job of our generation was to hold on to the principles of freedom long enough to get the next generation on the field and we really take back the land in a big way. The situation has dramatically gotten more acute by the day, and I don't know that we have 10 or 20 years. I still believe strongly in investing in the long-term project because freedom will never be won on a permanent basis. Anybody that thinks that doesn't understand the nature of the battle that we're engaged in. But we need to understand this moment is an acute moment in our country. The freedom forces that are standing up strong are being attacked on every side by people who want to silence us. In the next couple of years, I believe that we're going to have the battle of our lifetime for the battle of freedom, and it's going to be simply this. Will we stand up when they try to silence those who disagree with them? We have to, for our part, not silence people we disagree with. We oppose them in debate. We don't have to fund them, but we certainly would not ever use the power of government to try to silence our opponents. We use freedom to defend freedom. They use totalitarian tactics to destroy freedom. We need to be the people who stand for the freedom of this country. It's going to be the most important fight of any of our lives. I thank you for being involved in it. I see heroes of freedom. My friend Mark Meadows here, a hero of freedom that's standing strong. And I would encourage you, strongly encourage you, stay in the fight. And I ask God to bless you for what you're doing. Thank you so much.